Hook asterisk. Asterisk, when I bought my dream beachside estate, I expected peace and privacy. What I didn't expect. A power-hungry HOA Karen waging war to steal my private beach, thinking I'd just roll over. But she forgot one crucial detail. I'm a billionaire. And when she crosses the line, I decide it's time for a lesson she'll never forget. What happens next? Let's just say, karma's got a front row seat. Asterisk. Ethan Lancaster leaned back on his deck chair, the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore lulling him into a rare moment of peace. His private beach, asterisk asterisk his asterisk asterisk private beach, stretched beyond the glass railing, golden sand untouched except for the footprints of a few wandering seabirds. This was exactly what he had envisioned when he bought the estate. No corporate boardrooms, no suffocating social events, just serenity. The gated community of Seaside Haven sat a mile inland, its cluster of multimillion-dollar homes a sharp contrast to the secluded paradise Ethan now called home. He had deliberately bought property outside the HOA's jurisdiction, wanting nothing to do with their ridiculous rules about mailbox colors and acceptable hedge heights. It didn't take long for the trouble to start. Ethan had barely spent a week in his new home when the first sign of neighborhood nonsense arrived, quite literally on his doorstep. A thick, self-important envelope with HOA stamped in bold red letters landed on his marble entryway. He chuckled, flipping it open. It has come to our attention that your property's beachfront area is within the shared community space of Seaside Haven. Please note that HOA regulations apply, including restricted access for non-residents, maintenance fees and adherence to community standards. Failure to comply will result in fines and legal action. Sincerely, Karen Montgomery, Seaside Haven HOA President. Ethan let out a bark of laughter. This Karen, whoever she was, clearly had no idea who she was dealing with. He pulled out the official property deeds he had secured long before purchasing the estate. There was no shared space. No HOA jurisdiction. This land was his and his alone. With a smirk, he crumpled the letter and tossed it into the fire pit on his deck. He figured that would be the end of it. He was wrong. A few days later things got weird. It started with the lights flickering. Ethan was in his home office, reviewing investment reports, when his ceiling lights dimmed for a moment before surging back to full brightness. He frowned. The estate had its own private power grid, separate from the neighborhood's, so electrical issues should have been impossible. Then it happened again. And again. One evening as he grilled steaks by the beach, the entire outdoor lighting system cut out at once, leaving him in total darkness. The next morning his security cameras showed strange power fluctuations, flickering between normal footage and moments of pure static. Something was off. Ethan called his electrician, a no-nonsense guy named Marco, who arrived the next day with a puzzled expression. I ran a diagnostic on your system. Nothing's wrong, Marco said, scratching his head. Your backup generators are fine, main grid's fine. But there's something odd. Odd how? Ethan asked. Marco hesitated. It looks like someone's trying to siphon power from your lines. Ethan's relaxed demeanor shifted. Someone's what? There are unauthorized connections running from your underground power cables. Someone's been messing with them. Ethan exhaled sharply. He already had a feeling he knew exactly who was behind this. Can you pinpoint where it's coming from? Marco nodded. Yeah. Looks like it's feeding into the Seaside Haven HOA's main grid. Ethan stared at him for a long moment before breaking into a slow, incredulous laugh. You're telling me the HOA is stealing my electricity? Pretty much. Instead of immediately confronting his entitled neighbors, Ethan decided to play along. Asterisk asterisk for now asterisk asterisk. He called a private investigator, a former detective named Darren Klein, to do some quiet digging. If Karen and her HOA cronies thought they could push him around, they were in for a very expensive surprise. A few days later, Darren returned with a gold mine of information. You were right, Darren said, dropping a folder on Ethan's desk. Karen and the HOA had a massive budget shortfall last year. Instead of increasing dues, because that would have made her unpopular, she found a creative solution. Ethan flipped through the documents, his amusement turning to disbelief. Holy hell. Karen had authorized an illegal power tap into Ethan's private grid, rerouting it to Seaside Haven's streetlights, clubhouses, and even her own mansion. She had literally rewired the neighborhood to feed off his system. Darren leaned back, grinning. She probably thought you wouldn't notice. Big house, billionaire owner. Figured a few extra thousand on your bill wouldn't even register. Ethan smirked. Oh, I noticed. And that's not even the best part, Darren added, pulling out a copy of an email from Karen to the HOA board. The subject line? Dealing with Lancaster. Ethan read it aloud. Lancaster thinks he's above community standards just because he has money. We need to bring him into compliance. Once we finalize the beach access proposal, we'll present him with the mandatory HOA dues. Ethan let out a low whistle. She really thinks she can scam me into joining her HOA? Oh, it gets better, Darren said. I also found permits filed with the county. Karen's trying to rezone your beach as community space. If she pulls it off, she can legally fine you for using your own land. Ethan's grip tightened on the papers. This wasn't just petty HOA nonsense anymore. This was theft, fraud, and outright extortion. Karen thought she was playing some neighborhood power game. She had no idea she had just declared war on the wrong man. With a cold smile, Ethan reached for his phone. Time to remind Karen exactly who she's messing with. Ethan sat at his massive mahogany desk, swirling a glass of whiskey as he stared at his laptop screen. Karen Montgomery had made a very expensive mistake. The evidence was damning. Emails proving her intent to scam him into HOA membership, official documents showing her illegal power siphoning scheme, and her latest move, trying to rezone his private beach under the HOA's control. Ethan had spent years navigating corporate takeovers and hostile negotiations. If Karen wanted a fight, she was about to learn what real power looked like. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer Madeline Cho, a woman so ruthless in the courtroom that she once made a billionaire CEO cry on the stand. Karen Montgomery, Ethan said the moment she answered. I need her crushed. Legally, of course. Madeline chuckled. Legally is so much more satisfying. Send me everything. As Ethan forwarded the evidence, he got another call, from his security chief Lucas Vaughn. Boss, you're not gonna believe this, Lucas said. We caught HOA workers sneaking onto your property. Ethan almost dropped his glass. What? 2 guys wearing HOA maintenance vests were digging near your power junction. They ran when our cameras picked them up. Ethan's grip tightened. Karen wasn't just playing dirty, she was getting desperate. Did they leave anything behind? Yeah. A bag of equipment. Looks like they were trying to install a separate breaker. Probably to make the power siphon harder to detect. Ethan exhaled sharply, his mind racing. Karen had gone from sneaky power theft to full-blown sabotage. That meant she was terrified. And scared people? They made stupid mistakes. Which meant it was time to push her over the edge. The next morning, Ethan went on the offensive. Step 1. Expose Karen's power theft. Using a team of forensic accountants, Ethan compiled a detailed report showing how Karen had embezzled HOA funds, misallocated budgets, and illegally siphoned electricity. Then he leaked the report to every HOA member's inbox, along with a simple message. Your HOA fees aren't paying for community improvements. They're paying for Karen's fraud. The fallout was immediate. Karen's phone blew up with angry calls. Furious residents stormed the HOA office, demanding explanations. Several board members resigned on the spot, trying to distance themselves from her sinking ship. Karen, however, wasn't the type to go down quietly. That night, Ethan was reviewing security footage when Lucas burst into the study. You're gonna want to see this. Ethan followed him to the surveillance room, where the live feed showed Karen and a group of HOA cronies standing outside his gate, armed with clipboards, cameras, and measuring tape. What the hell is she doing now? Ethan muttered. Lucas zoomed in, catching the conversation on the microphones. We'll document all the violations, Karen was telling her group. If we can't force Lancaster into the HOA, we'll fine him out of existence. Ethan laughed out loud. Oh, this woman was unbelievable. She was still operating under the delusion that she held any power over him. Fine. If she wanted to escalate, he'd take it one step further. Ethan picked up his phone and made 2 calls. First, to his personal real estate agent. Second, to a local news station. It was time to make sure Karen's reign of terror didn't last much longer. The following morning, a news crew parked right outside Seaside Haven, cameras rolling as a reporter delivered a live exposé. Residents are shocked by the latest allegations against HOA President Karen Montgomery, who has been accused of fraud, illegal property tampering, and unauthorized use of a neighboring billionaire's power grid. Karen stormed outside in a bathrobe and slippers, screeching at the cameraman. "Turn that off. You can't film here. This is private property." "Ma'am," the reporter said coolly, "you are the president of a publicly registered homeowners association. This is very much newsworthy." Karen, red-faced and seething, turned on her heel and marched toward Ethan's house. Ethan was already waiting when Karen barged onto his property, huffing like a steam engine. "You think this is funny?" she spat. "Extremely," Ethan said. She slammed a stack of papers onto his outdoor table. "I have every right to regulate your property. You're in violation of several community standards and I—" Ethan held up a hand, cutting her off. "Karen, I don't think you're hearing me." He pulled out his phone, opening a document and turning it toward her. Her eyes widened as she read the title. Purchase Agreement, Seaside Haven Homeowners Association Land Assets. Karen froze. What is this?" Ethan smiled. "Oh, just a little real estate transaction. I bought Seaside Haven's debt from the bank. Turns out your HOA was struggling financially, and when an HOA is in debt, the land it governs becomes available for acquisition." Karen's face drained of color. You bought the HOA?" she whispered. "Oh, not just the HOA," Ethan said, standing. "I own everything the HOA controls. The clubhouse, the community park, and all the land around it." He leaned in. "Which means, Karen, you work for me now." Karen let out a strangled gasp, clutching the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did." He pulled out another document, dropping it in front of her. Notice of Termination. HOA President Karen Montgomery. Karen stared at it, speechless. "You're fired," Ethan said smoothly. "Effective immediately. Oh, and that house of yours. You're behind on your HOA dues, and since I own the HOA now, I get to decide what happens next." Karen's entire body trembled. You wouldn't." Ethan grinned. "Try me." The color finally drained from her face as reality crashed down around her. And with that, Karen Montgomery's reign of HOA terror was over. Karen Montgomery was a lot of things: power-hungry, manipulative, delusional, but she wasn't a quitter. Even as the walls closed in around her, she still thought she could wriggle her way out. Ethan could see it in her eyes, the way her fingers trembled as they gripped the edge of the termination notice, but her mind was already spinning, looking for a loophole, an escape, a way to win. "You can't just fire me," she hissed, regaining some of her composure. "The HOA board votes on leadership positions." Ethan smiled. "Oh, you're absolutely right, Karen." He gestured behind her. Karen turned and her stomach dropped. Standing at the edge of his patio was a crowd of HOA members, most of them people she had ruled over with an iron fist. Ethan had sent a community-wide email earlier that morning. Emergency HOA meeting. Mandatory attendance. They had all come hungry for answers and for revenge. One of the former board members, Linda Connors, stepped forward, arms crossed. "Ethan's right. The board votes on leadership, and considering the massive legal mess you've landed us in, I'd say it's about time we have a new election." Karen turned bright red. "You can't do this. I built this HOA. I made it what it is." "Yes," Linda said coldly. "And that's exactly why we need new leadership." Ethan smirked. "Would you like me to bring out the financial reports? The fraudulent permit applications? The fake lawsuit you tried to file against me?" He leaned in slightly, voice dropping to a whisper. "Because I'd be more than happy to make sure every single homeowner in this community sees exactly what you've been up to." Karen stiffened, her last threads of power slipping through her fingers. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A few people whispered things like, "She really tried to rezone his beach? And she stole our HOA fees for this?" Then Linda cleared her throat and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I move to vote Karen Montgomery out as HOA President immediately." "Seconded," someone called. "All in favor?" Linda asked. A sea of hands shot into the air. Karen whipped around, looking for allies, but all she saw were people she had overcharged, fined, and bullied for years. Her voice trembled. You can't do this." Linda's voice rang out, firm and final. Karen Montgomery, you are officially removed as HOA President. The crowd burst into applause. Karen's legs gave out and she collapsed into a patio chair, looking like a queen who had just been dethroned in the town square. Ethan folded his arms. Looks like your HOA rule is officially over, Karen. But Karen, being Karen, wasn't done yet. That night, while Ethan enjoyed a whiskey toast on his private deck, Lucas, his head of security, walked up with a grim look on his face. You're not gonna like this. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Karen's making a last-ditch effort to save herself. Lucas handed him a tablet. On the screen was security footage from the front gate. Karen, in a cheap disguise, a baseball cap and sunglasses, was slipping an envelope into the mailbox of a well-known real estate lawyer in town. Ethan tapped the screen. What's she up to? Lucas sighed. I guess. She's trying to sue you personally. Probably for wrongful termination, or some other nonsense. Ethan grinned. Perfect. Let her try. Because what Karen didn't know was that while she was out plotting, Ethan was already 10 steps ahead. The very next morning, Ethan made his final move. Step 1. Make the HOA's dissolution official. Since he now owned the HOA's land, assets and debts, he simply filed a motion with the county board to disband it entirely. By the afternoon, Seaside Haven's HOA was legally dissolved, which meant every homeowner was free from Karen's tyranny forever. Step 2. Karen's personal downfall. Ethan had quietly bought out her mortgage from the bank, acquiring full control of her house's loan. That afternoon, Karen got a notice on her door. Due to outstanding HOA fees and fraudulent mismanagement, your property has been seized. You have 30 days to vacate. Ethan wasn't sure what reaction he had expected, but watching Karen Montgomery stand frozen in her front yard, reading the notice with shaking hands, was oddly satisfying. She stumbled backward, her face pale. A few HOA members, her former subjects, cheered from their porches. And then, in the final blow, a moving truck pulled up across the street. Karen turned, confused, until she saw who stepped out. Ethan Lancaster. She sputtered in disbelief. What are you? Ethan grinned. Oh, didn't you hear? I just bought this place. He patted the moving truck. Figured I'd turn it into a vacation rental. Karen looked like she might faint. Her HOA empire was gone. Her house. No longer hers. Her reputation. Ruined. She had spent years weaponizing power, rules and regulations against others. And now she was on the receiving end of a billionaire's revenge. As Ethan walked past her toward the house, he paused. You know, Karen, I almost feel bad for you. Her lip trembled. Then he smirked. Almost. And with that, Ethan Lancaster walked into his brand new house, leaving Karen Montgomery standing in the street, homeless, humiliated, and utterly defeated. Karen Montgomery sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her entire world had collapsed in less than a week. No more HOA presidency. No more power over the neighborhood. And now no more house. She had tried everything, filing complaints, reaching out to her contacts, even trying to bribe a city official. But Ethan Lancaster had steamrolled her at every turn. For the first time in her life, Karen had lost. But she wasn't done yet. She refused to go down like this. With a deep breath, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number, the last person in town who still owed her a favor. Hello. Karen straightened her posture, forcing confidence into her voice. Judge Carter? I need your help with a property dispute. Ethan was enjoying a peaceful morning on his private beach, sipping coffee as the sun cast golden streaks over the ocean. He had won. No more HOA nonsense. No more power theft. No more Karen. But just as he was about to take another sip of coffee, his phone buzzed. It was Madeline Cho, his lawyer. Ethan, we have a situation. Ethan sighed. Please don't tell me Karen found a way to undo everything. Not exactly, Madeline said. She's filed a last-minute lawsuit, claiming that the beach is a protected public space. Ethan blinked. Excuse me. She pulled some ancient land ordinance from the 1800s, claiming your beach was once used as a community fishing area. If she convinces the judge, the county could classify it as a protected zone, which would mean anyone can use it. Ethan let out a low chuckle. So she's really trying to take my beach. Oh, she's trying. But Ethan. Madeline's voice was sharp. We're going to crush her. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread that Karen Montgomery, the fallen HOA tyrant, was making one last stand against the billionaire who had ruined her. Ethan walked in calm as ever, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. Karen, on the other hand, looked frazzled and desperate, her usual pristine appearance replaced with dark circles and a wrinkled blouse. Judge Carter, a no-nonsense man with decades of experience, took his seat and glanced at the case files. Ms. Montgomery, he said, adjusting his glasses. You're claiming that Mr. Lancaster's private beach should be classified as public land? Karen nodded eagerly. Yes, Your Honor. I have documents proving that the beach was used by the local community for generations. She turned, flashing the crowd a pleading look. This is about fairness, she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. The beach belongs to everyone, not just some billionaire who wants to keep it all to himself. A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the spectators. Ethan merely smirked. Madeline stood, her confidence radiating through the room. Your Honor, my client has owned this land legally and indisputably for years. Ms. Montgomery's argument is based on a law from the 1800s, which was overturned decades ago. She pulled out a thick stack of documents and handed them to the judge. This case is not about public access. It's about Ms. Montgomery's obsession with controlling what does not belong to her. She has no legal claim to this land, and this lawsuit is nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain power. Judge Carter skimmed through the paperwork, his expression growing more irritated by the second. Ms. Montgomery, he said, looking up, not only is your claim legally invalid, but filing a lawsuit under false pretenses is considered an abuse of the legal system. Karen blanched. But, Your Honor, I was just trying to. You were trying to use outdated laws and manipulation to take something that isn't yours, the judge interrupted. I'm dismissing this case with prejudice, which means you cannot ever bring it up again. Karen's mouth fell open. And considering your history of fraudulent claims, Judge Carter continued, I'm issuing a personal fine of $50,000 for wasting the court's time. Karen gasped. $50,000? If you cannot pay, it will be seized from your assets. The judge rapped his gavel. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Karen collapsed into her chair, looking like she might faint. Ethan? He simply stood, straightened his cuffs and walked out. Karen had officially lost everything. No job. No house. No money. The final blow came a week later when she was forced to sell her car just to cover the court fines. And as for her former kingdom of Seaside Haven? With no HOA to squeeze money from, the community flourished. Homeowners painted their houses however they wanted. There were backyard barbecues, kids playing on driveways, and no more ridiculous fines. The neighborhood was finally free. And Ethan? He sat on his private deck, enjoying a glass of whiskey as the sun set over his beach. Lucas walked up with a grin. Karen finally moved out. Last thing she said before she left town? I'll be back. Ethan chuckled. She won't be. Lucas smirked. And if she does? Ethan raised his glass, watching the waves roll in. She's already learned the hard way. You don't mess with a billionaire. What was your favorite part of Karen's downfall? Did you enjoy the legal battles, the HOA getting dismantled, or the final courtroom humiliation? If you were in Ethan's position, how would you have handled Karen? Would you have gone as far as he did or taken a different approach? Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare or a Karen in real life? What happened and how did you handle it? What's the worst rule you've ever seen an HOA enforce? Did it make any sense or was it just about power? If Karen had managed to win in court, what do you think Ethan would have done next? Would he have escalated things even further? If you suddenly became a billionaire, what's one ridiculous but satisfying way you'd get back at an unfair HOA? Hey everyone! If you enjoyed watching HOA Karen tries to ban my private beach, forgets I'm a billionaire, don't forget to thumbs up like this video if you love seeing HOAs get what they deserve. Speech balloon comment below. Have you ever dealt with a Karen or a crazy HOA? Tell us your story. Counterclockwise arrows button, share this video with your friends. Because revenge is best enjoyed together. Bell subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another epic Entitled People story. Thanks for watching and remember, mess around and find out. The Billionaire Edition.